other thing that I love, shelf stable for 3 years. So if you are ever like, I want to send my baby to space and I don't know what they would eat, Milkify. This is what they would eat in space. But they can eat it here on Earth too. Hello, hi, and welcome to all of you beautiful birthing and lactating people. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Elizabeth. I am a labor and delivery nurse, certified childbirth educator. And today, as somebody who has had 3 babies and has had to pump for those babies and given them breast milk in all sorts of forms, I wanted to come to you guys and talk to you a little bit about the handling and safe storage of human breast milk. I want to talk with you guys a little bit about milk donation, both informal and formal, so that you can pick a route that's best for you if that's something that you're interested in, either receiving or donating milk. And then I also want to talk to you about a really cool product called Milkify that actually freeze dries your breast milk and gives you the opportunity to have shelf stable breast milk for up to 3 years. Insane. Love it. So without further ado, I also want to let you know, head on over to my Instagram. We're going to be doing a giveaway for Milkify. So you could win a chance to get some of your very own breast milk freeze dried and shelf stable for 3 years. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk with you guys about is the handling and storage of human milk. And really what we know is anytime that you are expressing milk, it's coming out of your body and it's coming in contact with the outside world, then we have the instances where it can grow bacteria and cause issues, or it can be cross-contaminated with bacteria. So when we talk about how you should handle breast milk, that is what we are aiming to avoid. We want to maximize nutrients and we want to minimize any cross-contamination and any bacterial growth in this live substance that is breast milk. Breast milk is amazing. I could talk about that till the cows come home. But really what I want to do is just focus on a really simple rule that is helpful for you. So if we look at the different guidelines, you'll see some wiggle room between like 4 and 6 is a number that you'll often see. But my rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb that I think is really beneficial, is one that is more conservative, and then you can go from there as you feel comfortable, understanding that there is an increased risk anytime we lengthen these times. So the rule that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, which is one of the regulating bodies in America and in our healthcare system, is the rule of 4s. So that means that breast milk is good at room temperature for 4 hours, so left out for 4 hours. It is good in the refrigerator for 4 days. And then when we get to the freezer, if you just have a standard conventional freezer, it's good in there for about 6 months. And it's good in a deep freezer for up to 12 months, with the best benefit and retaining of nutrients and everything else at 6 months. Really, when we're looking at deep freezing milk, the longer that it is frozen, the less of the nutrients that we see kind of defrosting and still being there for your baby. So if you have breast milk in a cooler with ice and ice packs, that is good for about 24 hours. There also has been this whole big kermuffin, right? In 2021, they were like, AAP came out and said that you can mix temperatures of milk. And this is, again, it's risk benefit. You got to look at it, right? Because now they're saying, hey, we can't mix different temperatures because there is a concern if we mix different temperatures that can increase bacterial growth. So you have to decide what is best and safest for you, and if convenience is going to be a little bit higher up than what is necessarily recommended and safest, that's your decision. So was your baby born prematurely? Does your baby have a heart condition? Does your baby have any medical issues? You're going to need to be way more careful than somebody with a healthy term, especially an older infant. So these are all things that you want to kind of keep in mind. And what I'm saying, the information that I'm giving you is coming from the CDC, it's coming from the FDA, but then you have to look at your own life and your risks and benefits and what you want to decide from there. Just like anything in parenting, anything in labor and delivery and postpartum. Now, when we're talking about deep freezers and freezing milk, I think a lot of us get really fixated on having a freezer stash. I want you to know right now, you do not need to have a giant freezer stash. That is not necessary. Honestly, if you are going to work and you are pumping, the milk that you pump on Monday should be the milk that baby drinks on Tuesday. That is going to do two things. It's going to make sure that we have the most nutrient filled milk for baby at that time, that milk is most responsive to what baby's doing in that moment, whether baby has, a sickness, whether baby is having a growth spurt, whether we have more fat or less fat, depending on what's going on. That milk is also going to be the easiest for us to warm up for baby. You're not going to have to be dealing with frozen milk. If you do have milk in the freezer, that's okay. It's not a bad thing either. As somebody with a pretty significant oversupply, I do have a lot of milk in my freezer, and we'll talk a little bit more about what you can do with that milk. But one thing to also keep in mind when you are freezing milk is that you want to kind of start rotating it through your system so that you don't get to 12 months down the line and you have all of this milk that's frozen that it was from when baby was a month old. So trying to incorporate that milk into your feeding routine is something that you want to think about if you want to keep all of that milk for yourself. When we're talking about milk for the next day, so let's say I pump milk on Monday, I'm feeding it to my baby on Tuesday. There's a few things that I want you to keep in mind with refrigerated breast milk. Whenever we're storing anything, whether it is in the refrigerator or in the freezer, you want to make sure that you're not putting it in the door, you're putting it nice and deep into that refrigerator, nice and deep into that freezer. And the reason why we want to do that is because when you open the door of the refrigerator and close it and you're opening and closing it, the stuff is getting a mixture of temperatures that's in the front of the refrigerator. So we want things nice and deep in the refrigerator, nice and deep in the freezer. The other thing that you want to remember when you're taking that breast milk out to warm it up is you just want to warm it up in some warm water. You do not want to put it in really, really hot water. That can damage the nutrients. And you also do not want to put breast milk or formula directly into the microwave because it's going to kill nutrients and it's going to create hot spots within the liquid that could potentially burn your baby. Not good. Another thing to consider when you are refrigerating breast milk is obviously we want to put a date on the breast milk. We want to put your baby's name if you are going to a childcare facility. The other thing that you might want to take note of is the time that the breast milk is pumped. So our breast milk actually has different levels of different hormones, particularly like melatonin and stuff in the evening when it's time for baby to sleep. And if you're having a caffeinated beverage, which is totally fine to have when you're breastfeeding, in the morning, it's nice if you can give morning milk to a morning baby and nighttime pumped breast milk to a nighttime baby. Obviously, that can get a little tricky if you're doing shift work, if you're working night shift and baby is going to be getting that milk during the day, but just something to think about and keep in mind, particularly if you're having a hard time with baby's sleep. When you are washing your pump parts and your bottle parts, it's really important too to not put them directly in the sink. This is where there is so much nasty, creepy bacteria growing that we do not want cross-contamination for. So that is my number one tip. That pink basin that perhaps you got in the hospital, use that to wash your pump parts exclusively. That's what I do. Or go out and buy a little basin so that they are not going directly in the sink. I do love my sanitizer as well. I do that at the end of the day when I'm done pumping. I sanitize everything, one, for my peace of mind, and two, because it dries everything, which makes it that much easier to clean and put away. I want to move on to freezing of breast milk. So ideally what we're going to do is freeze in small increments. 2 to 4 ounces is great. That way you're not having to defrost like a 7-ounce of milk that baby might not need. When you're freezing it, it's really great if you can freeze it flat in your freezer, and then it stores so much easier. You can create these awesome bricks that I don't do, but people do and love. If you know you're going to be freezing milk, the faster you freeze it kind of locks in some of those nutrients. So if you let it sit in the refrigerator for a few days and then you freeze it, we lose a little bit more nutrients than if you don't. But still, it's not horrible if you do that, and often that is what I do. The other thing is, if you're freezing milk, before you freeze a whole bunch of it, go ahead and defrost a bag and let your baby try it and make sure that they don't mind if there is any differences. If maybe your milk develops a high lipase, which is still totally fine to drink but can alter the flavor, the baby still takes it before you do a whole bunch of milk freezing and then have ounces and ounces of milk that your baby will not take. Now, I work 1 day a week, so my baby gets almost exclusively frozen milk at this point because I have stopped all of my extra pumping and I just pump when I'm away from my baby. So when I am pulling out milk for them to use the day that I work, what I do is the night before, I go ahead and I get as much milk as I think baby will need, and I put it in individual Tupperware containers in the refrigerator. And my tip for this is if your milk bag has a crack or it has a leak, that way we are catching that in those individual little Tupperware containers in the refrigerator so that you're not losing any of that milk. And even if you decide you don't want to use that milk, you don't have that milk all over your refrigerator, because that's super, super frustrating. Now, pro tip, if there's still ice crystals, this milk can be refrozen, but once breast milk has been completely thawed, it needs to be used within 24 hours. Now, if your baby starts a bottle and doesn't finish it, that breast milk needs to be either consumed or thrown out within a 2-hour window of when baby's lips have touched the bottle. And this is, again, all to reduce our risk of having bacterial growth and potential infection from the milk. Now, the next thing that I want to talk with you guys a little bit about is if you have an oversupply of milk or an undersupply, and you may be looking to donate or looking to receive a breast milk donation. So there are two different types of milk sharing. There is formal milk sharing that is done through a milk bank, and there's informal milk sharing, and that is done person to person. So I also just want to touch on some reasons why you might consider milk donation and receiving milk if you do not have enough breast milk to feed your own baby. So some people might seek breast milk donation because they have an undersupply, or perhaps they are adopting, or perhaps they have a baby with a lot of GI upset, and so formula is something that really upsets their stomach. That is a big reason why I see people seeking donated milk. And I'm here to say that formula is another wonderful option if you need to supplement. Formula is life-saving. Formula itself is not sterile. There can be cross-contamination just like there can be with breast milk. Just some kind of things to keep in mind when you're making formula. You want to make sure that you're doing it really cleanly, just like when you are pumping to donate or you're pumping even for your own baby. You want to make sure that you're doing things as cleanly and sterilely as possible. Now, here's what I will tell you. The FDA recommends that you do not buy milk from a lactating person, and they recommend that you use a milk bank. And this is because through a milk bank, we can actually have a little bit more screening in the process. So if you donate through a milk bank, that milk often goes to NICU babies. You're not sure which babies are going to get it. You're donating milk that is then going to potentially be sold, and you also will have to pass some screening. So if you are interested in donating through a milk bank, you will contact the milk bank, and I'll have links for all of these down below. You will go ahead and do some screening, some medical releases. They're going to do blood work, and then you have to have a minimum amount that you're donating. So you couldn't just give them 30 ounces. This is a lot of legwork that they have to do on their end. So I believe most places it's a minimum of 150 to 250 ounces to donate. If you are getting milk from a milk bank, then you will buy milk typically from them. Sometimes milk banks will only donate to hospitals, and milk is actually used as a medication. So in this instance, milk banks use their shared milk that is screened and very, very, very safe as a medication for preterm babies. Babies who are born prematurely, especially very premature babies, are at risk for their gut not working properly, and having formula actually increases that risk of having NEC or necrotizing enterocolitis. Now, informal donation, which again the FDA recommends that we do not do, is when we are doing a direct me giving you, Sally Sue, my breast milk. There are a few different organizations that are in America, Eats on Feets and Human Milk for Human Babies, that have Facebook groups, and also they have websites where you can ask, hey, I'm looking for milk, or say, hey, I have milk to donate. And then you connect with somebody. And then there are questions if you are going to take this route and you are kind of assuming a little bit more risk here that you want to ask them about. Some great questions to ask if you are looking to receive milk through informal milk sharing is, what medications are you taking? What supplements are you taking? It can also be good to ask about their pumping process, their cleaning process, their sanitization process, just to make sure that they are being really, really careful. Do you have any allergens or dietary restrictions? Which you want to make sure if your baby has dietary restrictions that you're getting milk that aligns with those dietary restrictions. It's also important that we ask about health histories. So HIV and hepatitis can be transmitted through breast milk. And so that is one reason why we want to be really, really cautious if we're accepting milk from somebody who has not had their milk screened. It's also helpful to know how old is the baby and how old is the milk, and try and match those two things up so that a similar aged baby is getting similarly aged milk. The best person to accept milk from if you are doing informal milk donation is a friend or a family member, so somebody who you know and trust, but that's not always the case that we can find. If you're able to have these conversations, quite frankly, and also making sure that you feel comfortable accepting that milk, because again, you are accepting a little bit of a risk. Pretty small, but it's there, that there could be some sort of issue with that milk and the cleanliness of which it was pumped. Big thing that I want to highlight is if you are doing an informal milk share, it is perfectly appropriate for you to replace bags. Even if you want to give them a little gift card, that's great, but I would be hesitant from actually buying breast milk from somebody else, simply because there can be those horrible underhanded people who are giving you cow's milk or watered down breast milk to make more money, to make this a money-making thing. So for me personally, I don't have a milk bank super close to me, and I have been on medications for postpartum depression. So I'm not even 100% sure if they would be able to accept my milk. So I have donated a few times through informal milk sharing through local Facebook groups. And I actually, am able to meet up with these moms, meet these babies who are getting my milk, which is so cool, and hear their stories and hear their struggles and kind of just be another mom support person for them. Of course, I always disclose, hey, I occasionally have a glass of wine at night. Hey, I have been on Zoloft. Things of that nature that all need to be disclosed. Those are kind of our two options. I would love to hear if you have gotten milk informally or shared milk informally or formally, how that process was for you. Now, the other thing is you do not have to give away your breast milk. If you have an oversupply, go ahead and use your milk and keep giving it, to your toddler as they get bigger. Share the wealth within your family with all those good antibodies and everything else that's in there. But the other thing that I found out about with Rosie that I was like, this is beyond amazing and cool, is Milkify. So Milkify is freeze-dried breast milk. Longer storage, more convenience, better infant nutrition is what they're advertising. And so what I did is I contacted this company and I was like, hey, I would love to try that, and if I like it, I want to talk about it in a video and talk about it with my subscribers, because this is the kind of thing that we are super interested in, right? And they were like, oh my gosh, of course. We would love to do that for you, and we'll also love to do a giveaway for you guys. So head over to my Instagram if you want the giveaway deets, because it's pretty interesting. But this is how it comes. So what they do is I sent a whole bunch of frozen breast milk, overnighted it through FedEx. The most difficult part of this journey was actually taking my 3 children and this giant heavy box of like 250 ounces of frozen breast milk into FedEx and having 5 people tell me that my hands looked like they were full and not holding the door for me. But then they were able to send me this. So each bag, they go ahead and they freeze dry it, and then on the back, they tell you exactly how much water to add to it, make it so that the milk and the calorie per ounce is the same as it was previously. Now, what I love so much about this is great for when my husband is on the go and he's having to take Rosie a bottle. He doesn't have to worry about keeping breast milk cold. He doesn't have to worry about defrosting breast milk. He just brings some purified water and adds this to the bottle together. The other thing that I have been really loving this for, when I give her like oatmeal in the morning, when I give her things where normally I would maybe add a little bit of cow's milk to give us a little bit of nutritional punch, I'm able to actually just sprinkle it on top for her, which is so cool. She has oatmeal with a hint of breast milk and she absolutely loves it. The cool thing is too, these are resealable, so after I sprinkle some on her oatmeal, I'm able to reseal it. And then the other thing that I love, shelf stable for 3 years. So if you are ever like, I want to send my baby to space and I don't know what they would eat, Milkify. This is what they would eat in space. But they can eat it here on Earth too. So it is so cool. I want to thank them so much for working with me and for coming out with new and innovative designs that are going to make a big difference for people and make breastfeeding and being away from your baby and wanting to breastfeed your baby all that more convenient. Definitely let me know if you have done any milk sharing down below. Let me know if you're interested in this. Head over to my Instagram for the giveaway. And I do have a discount code for Milkify. So that's gonna be right up here on the screen if you are interested. And I am not getting paid for this at all. I just am super obsessed with this company and I think it's the coolest thing ever. So until next time, bye guys.